feature presentation.
Welcome back to episode 134 of the 8th best movie podcast in Canada. I am one of your hosts, Matt Rohrbeck, alongside he's allergic to tomatoes, but he is tomato meter approved, Eric Marchin.
Matt, you're just gonna hold on to that for dear life. That title.
It's the one thing we have, man. The one thing we have. So, Eric, how are you?
I'm good. I mean, we've had a week or so off from the regular show. We got back from New York after seeing White Noise, and so we're slowly starting to release new content. The Big C. You can go and check out our review of Werewolf by Night, which is now available, and our review for Amsterdam, which I'm sure by the time you're listening to this, it will be available or soon after. Spoiler alert, one was good and one was bad. I'll let you be the judge.
Yeah, it's been a New York minute, as they say. On today's episode, we'll be talking about
New York Minute.
Yeah, that's what this whole episode is going to be about. We'll be talking about our trip to New York, our little jaunt over to the New York Film Festival to participate in a Critics' Choice Association event for White Noise. We went to the press conference. We attended the premiere at the New York Film Festival. We had a little bit of time to explore and do some stuff, so we'll talk about that. Sticking with pure New York energy, the Super Mario Brothers trailer dropped, and whatever voice Chris Pratt's doing, maybe it sounds like someone from New York, maybe it sounds just like Chris Pratt. We're going to talk about that, as well as, I watched the newest episode of She-Hulk and other things like that, and whatever else we've been watching, probably some Dragon Ball, if we're being honest.
And catching up with news that we missed right before, the recording or the ending of our recording last time around, with Hugh Jackman being announced as playing Wolverine again in Deadpool 3.
We missed that by like 10 minutes. Yep. I feel like we recorded our last episode 133 about the Last of Us trailer. So we got a video game theme going on lately. And then, the news dropped that Hugh Jackman was coming back as Wolverine in Deadpool 3, like literally minutes after. So we'll have a jam-packed episode. Eric, do you want to get right into it? Do you just want to chit chat? What do you want?
We got to give the people what they've been waiting for, Matt. Your thoughts on the Super Mario Brothers movie from Illumination.
I'm sorry, as I'm prepping here, I'm making sure I have time codes because the people need to know when I start talking about the Super Mario Brothers movie. Eric, do you remember the day you first saw the Super Mario Brothers movie with Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo and Dennis Hopper?
Yes, Matt, I do. I remember fondly and excitedly picking up a copy of that very film, as you mentioned, on VHS. If for people that don't know what VHS is, it was the format before DVD, where it was literally a video box kind of set. And I just remember the two gentlemen that starred in the film, Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo, shining on that cover, smiling and looking happy. But little did I know that the movie was gonna suck hard.
Fuck you. I love that movie. I loved it as a kid, love it as an adult. I own the Japanese Blu-ray because I needed to watch it in 1080p. People who have been listening to our show for a long time probably know that video games were probably my first love before even like TV or film. Like when I was very, very young, my Uncle Mark, who also introduced me into movies, and he's a cinematographer and stuff, introduced me to video games. And my neighbors would have an original NES and a Super NES, and then I eventually got a Super Nintendo as well, and I just became obsessed with video games, and especially characters like Sonic, which we've talked about in our reviews for Sonic the Hedgehog, and but especially Mario, one of the most iconic characters, I think, just in pop culture in general. But I have played and beaten basically every Mario game. What just like downloaded on my computer? That was strange. Or opened
Mario? Is he coming in? Coming in hot?
That was real weird. but I played and beaten basically every Mario game. A Mario video game, Super Mario RPG, Legend of the Seven Stars is my favorite video game of all time. Super Mario World, absolutely incredible. I've been obsessed with the character for, my entire life. Um, Still to this day, Super Mario Odyssey, a great video game. Mario Party, fantastic. Mario Kart, iconic. I think, the movie, I don't disagree when people say it's terrible. It's just like I have this reverence for it, both as, a nostalgic feeling for when I was a kid and now as an adult rewatching it just for like the batshit kind of crazy ideas they threw into that movie and tried to adapt Super Mario Brothers into this live action film. And then I even liked, the Lou Ferrigno, not Lou Ferrigno, what's his name? The
Oh
wrestler
yeah,
who played him in
yeah.
the Lou Albino.
Albano,
Um, Albano,
Captain Lou
yeah.
Albano, who was
Um,
also in the
yeah, you got it.
Cyndi Lauper music video for "Girls Just Want to Have Fun."
I was obsessed with the Super Mario Brothers Super Show. I used to wake up at 5 a.m., I remember, to sneak downstairs and watch Ren and Stimpy and the Super Mario Brothers Super Show, which they would have little animated segments from, Super Mario Brothers as well as The Legend of Zelda. So that being said, after the Super Mario Brothers movie, bombed, critically bombed, like just bombed in general, Nintendo has been so hesitant to make, any adaptation of their properties. So when a long ass time ago we heard about, they said on the Nintendo Direct today, 7 years they've been working on this film with Illumination. I think it's okay to be skeptical of this. We haven't really gotten a great video game adaptation. Eric and I have talked about that, like time and time again. Every time we review a video game movie, or talk about a video game project, or even with the trailer for The Last of Us, which we hope is going to be great and truly looks like it could be the first great adaptation of a video game. I think the Super Mario Brothers movie became a little bit of a joke, just because of its past and, and video game history being adapted into film. So, I both ironically and sincerely have been very excited for this because I'm a huge Mario Brothers fan, and I want it to be fun. I want this to be a great kids movie or a great all ages movie, right? Like I want it to be the Lego movie, or I want it to be one of those animated movies that can be both loved by fans and by new kids who have no idea who Mario is, and just families. And I want this to be great. I will say, with Illumination being attached, this is going to be a long-winded intro, but I can't wait to talk about this trailer. So I'm just giving you a little history lesson. Illumination, not my favorite, animation studio, not my favorite film studio. The Despicable Me movies and the Minions, um, I flat out despise. And then the rest of their films have been very hit or miss for me. I did not like the Pets movie
The
they
Secret Life
did.
of Pets, How the Grinch Stole
Pets.
Christmas, the
Grinch is fine. It's just derivative in the same thing. It's just whatever. The Lorax, the Sing movies. Like again, I thought the first Sing movie was fine. It was cute. I saw it at TIFF. It was a good atmosphere. It was fine. But like they haven't really done anything for me. So I'm like, are these the right people to do it? Um, but then you say, okay, Miyamoto is going to be involved. The creator of Super Mario is going to be a producer on the film, and he's going to be part of the creative process. And then you go, okay, that's cool. Like that's what's happening with Last of Us with Neil Druckmann. Like involve the creators, the people who know these characters best, and care about this thing succeeding and being a good story and stuff like that. And then we get that cast announcement, almost, oh god, it feels like ages ago now, but a year and a half ago, or 2 years. I don't know what the hell time works anymore. And then they have the most batshit insane cast you've ever heard, just filled with really big name, actors. And I think
but
most of the
obvious
voice cast
choices
is,
too, right? Like it kind of felt like it was like a predictable kind of list of popular actors that you would pick like
yes and no.
four or
I
five
just never
years
thought,
ago.
sure, but I never thought in a Mario movie that would be the group of people you
Right.
get. I guess like when you're making an Illumination movie, like they get big name people to do the voices, and like it's just, I guess the Mario set of characters has just never it's just, I don't know what they were going to do, but I didn't expect to see Jack Black as Bowser and Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong and like Anya Taylor-Joy as Princess Peach and like stuff like that, which I actually all think are inspired, interesting choices, minus one person being Super fucking Mario, the lead, who is Chris Pratt, who has voiced countless animated characters, has been in
Well, the
everything.
Lego movie you
We
mentioned as well, right?
Yeah, which is obviously a big inspiration,
And
I think,
Charlie
to
Day,
this, even
right,
though this
as
is
Luigi,
playing
like he was Spaceman in the Lego
in
movie.
Lego
Yeah.
movie as well, right? Even Charlie Day as Luigi, I'm more like behind, but like after that casting announcement, you're like, this sounds wild. Let's see what happens. Anyways, flash forward. There's my 8-minute intro to today. We finally at New York Comic Con. Everything comes back to New York. We get a Nintendo Direct where they premiere the first teaser, it was very short, to the Super Mario Brothers movie, which they've confirmed is the name, which is the same name from the original film that they made, which is to no surprise. But the trailer starts with Bowser coming in on his giant kind of floating castle ship. Um, you get him taking over a kingdom with all of his Koopa boys, and then there's a reference to the penguins from Super Mario 64, and which I wasn't expecting to see in this trailer. You get Jack Black's voice as Bowser. You get him absolutely wrecking them. You get a little humor. You get Comic, the wizard Koopa, which I was like, hell yeah, Comic. And and then you jump forward to after Bowser destroys this kingdom, uh, Super Mario himself jumping into the Mushroom Kingdom. You have a little cute moment with Toad, voiced by Keegan Michael Key. And then you have Chris Pratt's Mario voice as they jump off into the Mushroom Kingdom. And that's pretty much it that you get in the trailer. Very quick, uh, beautifully animated, in my opinion. You get some deep cuts to Mario, not like even super deep cuts, but like stuff that maybe a casual person who doesn't know much about Mario wouldn't, like the penguin thing and even the design of the star and stuff like that. Oh, Bowser went to get a star at the penguins place, which looks like the stars from Mario
Which is going
64
to be
as
basically
well.
probably his Infinity Stones, right? In a way.
Yes, basically, yeah. Even like the Super Mario RPG game that the stars are designed much differently in that game, but it's called Legend of the Seven Stars, where he has Bowser's not really a villain in that game. It's more of a different character. But anyways, I think that's where they could go in the future. But if it's a very brief look. Like I guess I don't know what I was expecting, but I thought we were getting like a trailer, but then I'm like, oh wait, we haven't even gotten a teaser yet. So it does make sense that this trailer spends more time with Bowser, the Koopas, Comic, and the Penguins than with Mario and Toad and in Mushroom Kingdom. You get a very brief glimpse at Chris Pratt's Mario voice, which I think was the thing people were most not excited, but like worried about of what that would sound like. Because Jack Black doing a voice for Bowser, it still sounds like Jack Black, but like he's very much doing a character, like a voice for Bowser. Keegan Michael Key very much doing a voice for Toad.
Yeah.
Chris Pratt, New York Chris Pratt
It's almost
is
like the
like,
first time you see the trailer for Spencer or Blonde, and you're kind of
yeah,
questioning what Kristen Stewart or Ana de Armas's voice will be like. Both much better actors than Chris Pratt. And yeah, like it does basically sound like Chris Pratt with a hint of maybe a kind of, New
New
Yorker,
York Italian
Bronx
kind of,
kind of
yeah.
uh dialect going on, but there's not enough to really kind of make a decision, which I think, like it's almost like they still are aware that people are mostly interested in that, so they're kind of keeping that under lock and key, but not Keegan Michael Key. And so it'll be interesting to see how that kind of plays out in a second trailer and in the movie itself, and if everybody is kind of doing more vocal performances and not just kind of giving their own voice to, an animated character. Because you mentioned with Jack Black, I think the thing that was most interesting there is that Jack Black has a very distinct voice, especially when he's kind of, going in that higher octane or that higher range of performance. He's a very excitable actor. With this, it kind of did seem like he was putting on a performance in terms of how he was playing Bowser. So I think that that's maybe kind of interesting, just in the sense that you have these actors kind of playing roles and not just lending their voices to the characters.
Actually voice
Yeah.
acting, right? Which is why some people might just go, well, why don't you just get voice actors who can are trained into doing, these types of performances and things like that. That being said, I thought Keegan Michael Key and Jack Black were fine in the trailer. Like I actually liked Jack Black's portrayal of Bowser, and Keegan Michael Key caught me off guard because I was expecting Keegan Michael Key, and then I'm like, oh, he doesn't sound like him at all. It's just like, okay, that's cool. I agree with you that I'm interested to see, like, is Seth Rogen gonna be Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong, or is he doing a voice for Donkey
I mean,
Kong?
that
And I'm like,
laugh
I'm
is hard to
assuming,
mask, so we'll see
yeah.
about
Well,
that.
but maybe he just breaks into that laugh sometimes, which I'm all for. But yeah, just quick thoughts, and then Eric, you can give your overall thoughts too of what you think. Again, not much to go on, but like, it looks like they are going for the more sort of straightforward, like Bowser taking over these kingdoms and stuff like that, rather than the kind of meta thing that we talked about in the Lego movie or Wreck-It Ralph or something like that. Um, which I'm fine with. I think that's totally fine. We've gotten a lot of that meta stuff lately. That maybe a more straightforward thing is totally fine. Other than Mario coming in from somewhere, whether it's the real world, whether it's wherever Mario lives, New Donk City or something like that. But which he lives, there's a city in Super Mario Odyssey area called New Donk City. It's like New York City, but it's like anyways.
Do they have
um,
Donkin Donuts?
um, oh, I hope so.
That would
Um,
be a joke that would be in that film, probably.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Which I'm totally fine with. Like I want it to kind of be that family friendly, just like a fun movie. Like I think I've said this before where I'm like, I don't need this movie to be amazing. Am I stoked for it? Absolutely. And that is just pure sincerity. Like I am actually very excited for this movie as a Mario fan. And like I want video game movies to be good. And I think good can be great, like what I hope The Last of Us is going to be, or just good, like what I hope Mario is going to be. Like I just want Mario to be like a fun time. Like it doesn't need to be groundbreaking. It doesn't need to be like the best kids movie ever. It doesn't need to be a Phil Lord or Chris Miller movie. It doesn't need to be that. Like I did like Teen Titans Go to the Movies quite a bit, and I think it did have that kind of balance of like meta humor and just general sincere funny moments. And like I think those guys can bring that to this movie. And I thought it looked gorgeous. I liked how Bowser looked, how all the Koopas were animated, how Comic was animated, and I liked how beautiful the Mushroom Kingdom looked. Like Mario, I think it'll take a second to adjust because we're so used to that video game version, and to kind of illuminationify him is a bit jarring at first, I think, because they do very much have those same eyes, and it doesn't look like all the human characters in Illumination movies, but you know what I
Yeah,
mean, right, Eric? Like it still kind of has that Illumination look to it, which I'm not surprised. We didn't see a minion in the trailer, so I'm glad.
there's still
um
plenty of time
will
though.
there Yeah, there's still plenty of time of a minion dressed up in like a turtle suit or something like that, which I bet happens, but I hope it doesn't. But I'm just hoping that it's gonna be a fun time, and this trailer gives me not much to go off of, but that opening sequence with Bowser with the penguins, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe they are, have a bunch of people who really have this reverence for Mario, who are going to throw a bunch of references, who are going to kind of play with it and have fun with it and just make like a fun family movie. And if it's like a 3.5 out of 5 at the end of the day, I think that's a huge success for me. Like that's all I kind of need this movie to be. If it becomes a 4 or 4.5, it'll never be a 5 out of 5 unless I'm just like, holy fuck, they nailed Mario. And for me personally, it's a 5. But that's like there's no way. Um, if they adapted Super Mario RPG, which they could eventually, that might be a 5 out of 5 for me. But include Gino and Mallow. Oh, come on, Smithy. And oh, I want Super Mario RPG to be a movie so badly, Eric. But Chris Pratt's voice is the only thing that I'm kind of still, I don't know what I
Iffy
wanted
on.
after he was announced. Yeah, like it's gonna be fine. Like he's just gonna sound like Chris Pratt, which is like not the best and it's not the worst thing. Like I'm glad he's not doing a cartoony Italian accent.
You'll
I'm
save that for Garfield.
weirdly like, and then I'm kind of glad we didn't get the classic Mario voice either, just because I feel like that could be grating, like for a whole movie. So I don't know what I would have wanted from a Mario voice, but I guess just generic dude is totally fine. But I am curious. We didn't see a lot of the other people. Like we didn't see Princess Peach. We didn't see Donkey Kong. We saw a brief glimpse of Luigi in like a in one of Bowser's castle with dry bones. And yeah, I'm excited to see more, and I think it looks gorgeous. So I'm all in though, because like I really want this to be fun.
Yeah. I'm yeah,
Indifferent or
like
what?
I'm not like, like this movie shouldn't exist and look at the track record of video game adaptations and things like that. It's just, oh, okay, well, like I don't really have any expectations going in really whatsoever. I did play the N64 version of the game and Mario Kart Party
So
and
did you
things.
recognize the
Yeah,
penguin?
yeah, and like
Okay,
there are
sick.
certain characters that I'd be curious to see if they pop up that are within, that era or that console.
Yeah.
So, and I did appreciate that the at least with the opening sequence with Bowser's introduction, it wasn't too kind of gimmicky and like winking at the camera, and it kind of seemed to not be self-serious, but at least it kind of respected like, oh, it's playing up, this villain type character, and there is a little bit of menace and threat there in a way that even in Jack Black's performance, it wasn't just simply like, hey, I'm Bowser, I'm a goofy
Yeah,
villain
yeah,
that's
yeah.
gonna do
They're
horrible
playing it
things. Yeah.
straight, which I'm yeah.
And that's where like you could see that in the wrong hands, and again, like this is only a couple minutes worth of footage, but
Yeah, not enough. It's two sequences,
yeah,
right? Or a sequence in a
you
scene.
could see that kind of being something that the studio learned from, like the wrong lesson to learn from the Lego movie, where like the Lego movie does have that self-referential kind of wink at the camera quality, but it almost earns that with its clever writing and the emotional arc that's sort of the foundation of that first film at least. And a lot of movies that we've seen in the last little while have taken some of those aspects in terms of the meta humor, and for better or worse, obviously Phil Lord and Chris Miller have kind of cultivated that even more so with Spider-Verse, and have done an amazing job with that, and I'm sure that will also be an influence on this movie and in its development.
Yeah,
So
because each kingdom could be considered a different universe, right?
yeah.
Like depending. That seems like what Bowser's up to.
But yeah, I don't have
Um,
anything against it. I don't have anything necessarily for it. I'm happy to see it do well in the sense that we've talked about this before, and
the possibilities if it does
yeah,
well
like
is
I think I
exciting.
would be more excited about a Star Fox movie than anything else, or if they made like a Mario Kart movie. I don't know. Just like hearing Mario go
There'll be a Mario
battle.
Kart bit in this, yeah. Like you got to think that Mario Kart is referenced in some of the sports and stuff in
Yeah.
this. Like, yeah, I think that's kind of where my excitement goes too. Like, if this movie makes $1 billion, like, which it could make a ton of money. Like, being an animated movie, being from Illumination, who has a track record of making like a huge money on some of their movies, and just being an a property that like I think is one of the most iconic characters in anything. Like I think even people who don't play video games, who don't really like if you said Super Mario, they could probably explain to you what he looks
Yeah.
like 9 out of 10 people. And that's grandmas, that's children. Maybe he's not as like relevant to like teenagers now or like kids like maybe as much, but I still think most people would know what Super Mario is or what he looks like, and like kind of give an impression of him or something like that. So I could see this movie
Well, he's
like
the figurehead,
really
right, of
crushing it.
Nintendo.
Yeah.
Like if you were to ask like anybody, can you name any like video game
Video
characters, or
game.
do you know what
It's a
Nintendo
Nintendo
is? I
and
mean, even if
Mario.
they don't know the name, they can say, "Oh, it's like that weird like Italian plumber guy," you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, that's exactly it. So I feel like it will do super well. And, I think at best it's going to be like, oh, that was a fun movie. And then at worst, you're like, oh, they should have never done it. Like, they should have just stayed away. But I have a good feeling that we are going to be in that sweet spot of like, that was pretty good. Like, that was good. And it's going to make a ton of money. And then, like, we're going to get maybe there are already rumors of a Donkey Kong movie with Seth Rogen, which is like, there's so many different franchises. You got the Donkey Kong Country, you have Star Fox, you could introduce Kirby, you could introduce Zelda is like I know they were working on that Netflix series for a little while, but I just think like a CG animated like Legend of Zelda movie would absolutely crush, like if you got the right people involved in that. And like a Star Fox CG movie would be awesome. It's just Star Wars, but it's, you could do a fully animated, it would be kind of like Lightyear, but probably more, fun and tongue in cheek. Like Lightyear took a more serious route, but had some
There'll be
humor
more
in it.
barrel rolls in
Um,
Star Fox.
yeah, do a barrel roll, baby. Just Smash Brothers, even, right? Like if you wanted to take the Marvel approach and do these movies and somehow do some sort of crossover thing, like Smash Brothers is prime for that. But like, yeah, I'm really hoping it does well. I want this to be the golden era for video game adaptations. Like I really do. Like I'm all for original ideas as well, everyone, but I do think that adaptations are never going away, whether they're from books or remakes or video games and other mediums and things like that. Like it's TV shows being turned into movies. Like it's never going to stop. So why not have them at least be good and not just lazy like cash grabs. So it seems like everyone's invested in this, and like I'm here for it, so I hope it's good.
Yeah, it seems like it's a pretty fail-safe investment just in terms of its box office chances. And you have a studio like Illumination. They've been doing very well with all of their films. I mean, even just this year, obviously, like with Minions: The Rise of Groot. I mean, that movie crossed over $100 million and was one of the most successful films of the summer movie season. Being an animated movie is a point for it. Being a kids movie, or kind of geared towards kids as well, also helps. And having that
They have
nostalgia of an older generation having grown up with the various consoles and the gameplay, so you have that. So there's a lot of positive factors playing into this that will make it probably like it has to be terrible, like absolutely positively terrible.
for it to
Yeah.
not
Yeah,
make
to get the
a
little
ton of
bomb
money.
guy in to come in and blow up the whole,
Bomb on.
yeah, to
Yeah,
blow up the whole thing. So I think like it's kind of almost a foolproof movie in a lot of
this
ways.
movie's making almost $100 million opening
Yeah.
weekend, I'm saying
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Like, because I'm looking at Illumination's box office history. They have two movies that have crossed 1 billion, which is the first Minions film and the third Despicable Me movie. But Despicable Me 2, 975 million worldwide. These are all worldwide. Minions: The Rise of Gru, 919 million worldwide. That was this year. You have Secret Life of Pets made 885 million worldwide, had a over $100 million opening weekend. I
Yeah.
forgot. Like Illumination is huge. As much as I don't like a lot of these movies, like families love this shit. Like they love these movies. And if you put the Minions at the beginning of that trailer, like like they come out with the Illumination logo, and you have like from the studio that brought you Secret Life of Pets and the Minions, it's like their lowest grossing stuff is Hop and the Lorax, and then everything else is made over $400 million worldwide. So like it's foolproof, really. Like you got to think the whole Despicable Me movies have almost all made like 1 billion. Um, it the opening weekends, Minions 115 million, Minions: The Rise of Gru 107, Secret Life of Pets 104. This shit's making over $100 million opening weekend.
Yeah.
I'm calling it right
Yeah,
now.
I think that that's a fair bet to place. Like it's something that if it doesn't, I would be more surprised if it made the kind of box office money that y-
If the Lorax made 70 mil opening weekend,
y-
This is
Yeah,
moving
like if it makes
100.
less than the Lorax or the same as the Lorax or Hop,
Then it's a
then it is a
failure.
failure. But I don't think it is. I think it has so many demographics kind of ticked off
Yeah,
already. Like the only criticism and the only thing that I would say, and this isn't even really a slight against the movie, it's just the world we live in and it's a generational thing, is that this is something that has been around for decades now, and it kind of feels like, you just mentioned not too long ago that maybe young kids or teens now won't have the same reverence for it that you did growing up, because Mario's not the character that they're interested in the video game world. And so with that, like, there's always that kind of feeling of a generation before or a couple generations before always taking the things that they loved and saying, isn't this great, isn't this wonderful, like you should love what I love. And it's like, no, I don't
yep,
have to love what you love. I want to love new things that are made, create new worlds, and be inspired by the next step, and that could be something that could be rebelled against with the film a little bit,
sure.
but I don't think that will hurt it that much. And that's not even against this movie specifically, that's just in
No,
general with you know every generation that comes into power from the one before is going to take the things that they were most nostalgic and longing for.
and right now it's 80s and 90s
Yeah,
stuff,
and
right?
it's
Like
kind of
it's
like, okay, well, you have to also consider the generations that are growing up now might not have that same investment in those things that you love, and it doesn't mean that you should force those things on them either, and they, or they shouldn't have to love them by obligation. So that's like the thing where it's like, it's always nice to have something that you're familiar with and comfortable with, and brings you that kind of warm fuzzy feeling. But at the same time, it's also good to have new stuff, and that's like, even like, moving away from Illumination, like I worry more about, like, Pixar, with them kind of not doing as many original um productions as they used to, where now they started as a company saying that we're not going to do sequels. Sequels made sense for something like Toy Story, I understood that, but now it kind of feels like they've gotten to that point where,
like to do Inside Out too and
yeah,
like
they've
things like
lost their
that. Like
way a
yeah.
little bit. But that happens even just with live action stuff too, like with
But they still
comic
put
book
out bangers
movies.
though. So if we get one banger for every 3 now instead of like consistent bangers every movie, they're also making 2 movies a
Yeah.
year
Turning
sometimes
Red
and
is
like
is
stuff
is
like that.
great, but
Like
like Turning Red was another thing where it was like, it kind of sucked that that movie was at the tail end. I mean, we're still
of
in
the
the
pandemic,
pandemic,
yeah.
but in terms of,
Yeah.
you know,
The
s-
pandemic era of things being
yeah,
closed
and it's
and stuff like
streaming
that.
for free on Disney Plus, and it's kind of like, oh man, that kind of sucks. I mean, Domi Shi put so much work and effort into creating something that was very
I would have
personal.
loved to see it in a theater,
Yeah,
yeah.
and also something that just was wholly original, and like, it kind of was like, oh well, Lightyear's the first movie to be released by them that is, and Lightyear's fine, but it's just like, again, it's kind of like a very
Lightyear didn't even
no,
perform
it
that
didn't.
well, did
it,
it?
it it was a safe
Yeah.
play, but it was one that didn't work. So I mean, if Super Mario Brothers does what Lightyear does, like, that could be telling, but I still don't think that that's gonna be a
I
problem.
think yeah, I think the whole Lightyear thing was confusing to people of like what that movie was, where I think Mario is very it's pretty simple to understand what it is. It's colorful. It's like it's a well-known character where the whole Lightyear thing of being like a different voice actor, it's not the colorful fun Toy Story movies. It's a more serious film. Like
Some of the
is
politics
this the
behind it, but
yeah.
then also, even again, the pandemic era of expectations, where it's like, you know what, I have Disney Plus, I'll wait until it's available on Disney Plus to watch. I don't need to go and pay another $12 for one person, let alone $75 for a family to go and see. And that's just probably for tickets for the film itself, if you have
Yeah.
a small or relatively kind of medium sized family. So it's like, well, I have the subscription to Disney Plus, it'll be available within 7 weeks, so why not just
That's
wait?
also part of people's mentality now,
Yeah,
right? Yeah. Once you instilled that with Pixar movies, I'm curious to see moving forward, right? Because like Lightyear is the second lowest grossing Pixar movie in theaters behind Onward, which only had a couple weeks in theaters,
yeah.
right? Before everything shut down. Like Lightyear really at 218 million worldwide really bombed for them. Like lower than The Good Dinosaur, dude. And that's wild,
Did A
wild.
Bug's Life make more?
Um
Oh
yeah.
man,
And that was like in 1998 made more. Um
jeez.
so for it made lower than the first Toy Story, and these are all in the 90s, right? So like, yeah, I mean, you're making a good point. Like, I guess people, especially with animated movies, but I guess with
But Rise
um
of Gru
min
did so well,
yeah,
right?
that's what I mean. Like that shows me that people will still go out for an animated movie, but maybe for a Pixar movie, Disney shot themselves in the foot a little bit of being like, well, you can get these on free on Disney Plus, so like why do I need to go to a theater to see this? Like I can just get it in 45 days, or I did get this day and date the last two movies. Why do I have to go pay to go see this in a cinema, right? Especially families who, we talked about this before, when you have to bring four children, your two children, their two friends, the mom and the dad. It ends up being a
Concession
$150 day at the
stand as
movies,
well if you're
right?
going to
Like,
buy anything there.
yeah. So
Parking.
I understand. So, but and then the Minions Rise of Gru became like that meme, right? So you had that generational thing where it was
Oh, people
like,
dressing up as
weirdly, Despicable Me's been around long enough, right? That those kids who were kids when that first one came out are now teenagers and stuff like that, and they're going and seeing Minions because of that, or dressing up in suits and going to the theater to be ironic and but boosting box office numbers, right? So I don't know, with Mario, I think you'll have a lot of, it does have that generational kind of pull between, us in our 30s who loved the character when we were younger, and I think people even a little bit older than us and a little bit younger, and then you have that younger generation, which I think Nintendo's still huge. Like the Nintendo Wii and the Nintendo Switch have been absolute, like, the highest selling video game consoles, beating Xbox, beating, PlayStation and things like that, because it kind of appeals to everyone, right? So I do think that this movie will crush it. And whether critically crush it, I don't know. Like, it may end up getting a 65 on Rotten Tomatoes or something like that, where it's like, yeah, some people liked it. It's still just kind of a middle of the road kids movie or something like that. Or it could be great. Who knows? We've seen a minute and a half from it. So we did 40 minutes on it though.
Yeah, and I also quickly think that like Universal, even though theatrical release window has gotten shorter, and obviously they've done well with films like Trolls 2 and things like that, they also don't advertise the fact that the release window is shorter, or that there's the premium purchase of something on iTunes the way that Disney Plus kind of
Yeah.
has, and that kind of also helps with that kind of almost anonymity kind of thing, where like you have the film still playing theatrically, but then also is available to purchase for a premium price, but there are
For
still
$25.
people
Yeah.
seeing it in the theater because maybe they don't realize it, where like if they have obviously Peacock is available in the US, but it doesn't always get like the new releases right away, or it doesn't play
But
day and
weirdly,
date.
Halloween again is like,
Yeah.
so it's
But like
interesting.
something
Yeah.
like, Idris Elba in Beast is still playing theatrically at Landmark Cinemas, and it's like it's still playing at least 2 screenings a day. So there are people that are still going to that movie, and I wonder if it's like
Or I think it's like you have a 24 cinema
yeah,
theater and you have to fill that shit out, and there's not enough movies coming out anymore, I think, really. Like, cuz movies got delayed because of the pandemic, or um it just spread out a bit more, not as many are getting made. Like, it's interesting, even with Knives Out, Glass Onion getting like a full release at AMC and Regal and stuff like that in the US. That news came out today.
Thanksgiving,
um
right, in the US. That's
yeah, where they're accepting other movies because I think they just need to fill these screens up. And I'm seeing movies like Everything Everywhere All at Once played until, like, I feel like I still saw someone I went to the movies the other day and saw Everything Everywhere All at Once. I'm like, that shit's been out at home for like 3
well,
months
Top Gun
now. And
Maverick, right?
someone,
Like Tom Cruise was
yeah,
really
Maverick,
smart
yeah.
with kind of always extending that theatrical window and keeping it going and kind of moving it back further and further. And because, I mean, it was a popular movie and it did well, but the word of mouth was so strong and the movie itself was so good that it's not only sustained itself over the summer, but like even having its, you know, even it being available now to purchase to watch at home is not the same experience as watching it in the theater. And that was kind of a marketing sort of strategy there, where it's like you need to see this theatrically. And I mean, the Blu-ray and 4K isn't even coming out till the beginning of November, so a movie
Yeah.
like that has really emphasized the importance of the theatrical experience and has maintained that. So there is always going to be those movies, and I feel like the Super Mario Brothers film will be that movie that does quite well. And I think the spring is a good time to open it, because it's that gap between, the award season is over, people are looking for something kind of as a palate cleanser, and then it's right before kind of the bigger movies come out. I think Mission Impossible actually is opening around that time as well, or March.
I'm looking it up now.
So, you have something for the kids, you have something for the adults, you have something that will push people to go to the theater, for those opening weekends, and possibly kind of keep going and build that momentum for the following weeks.
Yeah, like I think it's gonna do very well because you don't really have any kids films around it. So in late March, you're gonna have Shazam: Fury of the Gods on the 17th, John Wick Chapter 4 on the 24th. You're gonna have the Untitled Scream sequel the week before on the 31st.
Six
And then
Cream?
on this, yeah, and then Supreme. And then on the same day you have On a Wing and a Prayer, which is a Dennis Quaid movie that'll probably
Oh,
be
it's a religious film. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that sounds right. And then the Pope's Exorcist, also a religious film
Nice.
on that day.
I think Russell
So
Crowe's in that, actually.
yeah, Russell Crowe, Julius Avery directed. Who is he? The guy who did
Overlord and Son
Overlord,
of a
which I
Gun.
actually, and he did Samaritan this year.
The
I
Sly
didn't know
Stallone
that
movie? Yeah.
because I liked Overlord, but I didn't even know he did Samaritan, and I haven't heard much of it. Then you have Renfeld
Nick
the
Cage is
next week.
Dracula.
Um and then Next Goal Wins on the 21st, and Evil Dead Rise on the 21st, but Guardians of the Galaxy in May 5th. So there's nothing around it,
Yeah.
dude.
So it'll
Nothing.
do quite well, and it'll have probably those couple of weekends afterwards where it continues, like that drop off probably won't be, you know,
No, because like I Renfeld, which is also a Universal movie, which is interesting.
and they're
Um
kind of going for the angle of like, I think I don't think it takes place in the same universe, but they're kind of looking at it as like another Invisible Man, right? Where like it's kind of their newer take on the dark universe that's not the dark universe, that's post dark universe.
yes, which it's yeah,
Because
yeah,
it's from
yeah,
the
yeah.
director of the Lego Batman movie too, right? And the
Yeah,
Tomorrow War
yeah.
with Chris Pratt. So
We'll see, man.
Chris
I don't
McKay, I
know.
believe. Yeah.
Yeah, Chris McKay, you're right. Moving on from Super Mario to New Donk City. Eric and I popped down to New York for a day and a half. Like I mentioned earlier in the show, to attend a Critics' Choice Association event where we attended the premiere of White Noise at the New York Film Festival, as well as attended a press conference the next day with Noah Baumbach, Greta Gerwig, Don Cheadle, Danny Elfman. I was going to say Donnie Elfman.
Donkey Elfman.
Donkey Elfman. And yeah, so Eric and I went to New York, which was pretty fun. A place we've been to quite a few times. So
Who could forget that
this
screening
wasn't
of Venom?
yeah. It wasn't quite like our LA trip where it was like a 6.5 hour flight each way. The flight, I forget how quick it is because
It's
like
le-
I
it's
haven't flown to
it's
Newark in a while,
less
but it's like a
than
train
an
ride. It's
hour,
just,
or it feels like
yeah.
like
In the air, it's like exactly an
yeah.
hour. And I think it's just all that process of getting to the airport, getting on the plane, taking off, landing, getting off takes way longer than the literal hour you're in the air. Like you're basically whoop, whoop, and then you're down. And I'm like, I barely had Eric. I watched an episode and a half of Dragon Ball because by the time they're like, okay, we're up in the air, you can take out your laptop and stuff now. And I take out my laptop, I watch an episode of Dragon Ball, I get 10 minutes into another one. They're like, gotta put that away, we're landing. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, okay, cool.
Compared to
But
that those like 8 hours on that bus, you know.
doesn't that make you even more mad? We probably told that whole story on this podcast,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
like at some point. Um, but I will never take a bus to New York ever again. Like I'd rather get to the airport 3 hours early and just chill and then get on my flight that takes an hour than do that 11 hours on the bus. It's miserable.
Yeah, and I think, full transparency as well, Netflix paid for it, so it's not
Yeah.
like, you know, like I understand taking the bus is a little bit cheaper in terms of,
Oh, I don't if you have to do it, you
yeah.
have to do it. I did it for a long time. And if you still want to go to New York, it's still you get to go to New York and it's cheap.
Yeah, and I think
But
if you're a little bit younger as well, like that doesn't it's like the best way to do it still probably is overnight, because at least you can try to get some sleep on the bus even though it is almost impossible to do so. Um
Mhm.
but yeah, like, you know, turning 30 and going to New York was a blast. Obviously, you got very sick by the end of it. And then coming back was just agony because we had already experienced, the 8-hour bus ride with a couple of stops coming. So we knew what to expect going back, which was more of the same. But then when you take a plane in and you get into LaGuardia, it's literally just, so quick. It's like there's nothing better than knowing that you're at your destination, almost as soon as you get in the air, and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
there are less things to worry about. And I think on top of that, this time around, kind of getting through customs was a lot easier because of the app
How great is that app?
that
Yeah,
you
I gotta
yeah.
plug. I kind of want it to be a secret, but I don't want to be a jerk and not tell people about
Right.
it either. It's called Mobile Passport Control. It's called MPC. So if you're a Canadian or probably even an American, like returning at certain airports, and have to go through customs, if you don't have like a Nexus card or a global entry card, and you just have to go through normal customs like all the other schmucks, like this app is incredible. And I don't know if they steal all the information off my phone. I don't know what. I hit check mark on something, but it saved me a good 45 minutes in that line. Cause like, or longer. Cause like, I remember the time we went to LA and we like literally just made our plane because they made us sit for so long. We couldn't go through security until 2 hours before our flight. And then we were in customs line for over an hour. And then we were like running to our flight essentially. Where this mobile passport control, just you can find it in the app store. I think it's maybe on Google and iOS. um it's you do all your custom stuff before, so you scan your passport, you put in all your information, you answer all the questions of what the purpose of your trip is, when you're coming back, all that kind of stuff that they ask you when you get to customs. And then basically you save that, and then when you get to the airport you submit it and you get a QR code. And then there's a separate line at customs that says mobile passport control. It's off to the right, at least at Pearson, because you do pre-customs in Toronto when you go to like the US. And no one in that line. And there was like a bazillion people in the normal line. It was incredible. I felt like I was like a VIP somewhere. Like, and I felt like such a jerk, but I'm just like, you guys can all download this app. No one's doing it. Like, so if you're going to the US in the near future, before people realize this, if you're an early adopter of tech, um, you will pass through customs in 2 minutes. And it's
And
fantastic.
you can
And
even
like
download
secure
it when you're like literally like getting into
there,
the line, like you
because Terry Hart did
yeah.
that. Yeah. So she didn't download it until she was passed through security and saw how long the line was. And someone's like, oh, if you scan this code, you can download this app and go in this line and do it. So I would just say pre-do it before you get to the airport, because it just saves you time and energy and hassle. And it was magic, and it made it so much easier. You could probably shave off that 3 hour get to the airport early for international flights to way less because like, but it does depend on how long the security line is, and you never really know. But the security line wasn't too bad when we got there, at least, or at least when I got there. Um, and then coming home, security was literally walk on. And we got there 3 hours early, and I'm like, oh yeah, we don't have to do customs here. And I'm like, oh man, we're really early. And then I got an early flight home, so that was dope.
Yeah,
And you got Shake Shack.
yeah, and even like doing customs back in Toronto, it was nothing. Like it was literally
Yeah.
like I just took up the information that I needed to have, and they're like, "Yep, you can go."
Yeah, basically same. He's like, "Oh, you New York? New York? Did you have a good time?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "All right, go."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Okay, cool." And then yeah, the trip itself was it was fun. It's fun to do it with you and hang out in a different place. It's fun to go to a hotel for a night. Like it's just nice during these times to like still kind of get away for a day
Yep.
and like
Brussels sprouts.
um oh my god, yeah, we'll get into that. So like we didn't have much time to like we did have a lot of time, but not enough time to like go do something. You know what I mean? Like I basically was like, yeah, I could hop on a train. I could go down to Times Square. I could go to
Olive
Brooklyn. I could go
Garden.
to Queens. We could go to the Olive Garden in Times Square. Um, but I'm like, I'm just gonna stick around here. So you got in a little bit later than I did.
Yeah.
So when I got there, I had a couple hours to kill because my room wasn't ready. So I was like, I'm gonna go get Shake Shack. I'm like, I'm here. I can't get Shake Shack at home. I definitely need to go. So I go for a good 20 minute walk to Shake Shack. Get there. It's pretty busy like usual, but there's outdoor seating. I see they have a Hot Ones burger. And I was like, ooh, baby, I gotta get this. I love a good collab. So like I see the Hot Ones logo and I'm like, I gotta try this thing. And like they had a chicken version, obviously, because that would make more sense. But it's Shake Shack. I have to get the burger. So it was called the Hot Ones burger. Had like bacon, cheese, like a Monterey Jack cheese, the burger, and this spicy sauce on it. Um, and on the thing they're like it's a 7 out of 10 for spice, and I'm like that sounds good. I don't want my mouth to be on fire, but I want this to be Hot Ones. I want it to be a little spicy because those Hot Ones Pringles I got before were shockingly spicy. um so I order that, get some fries, get a Coke Zero, while I'm waiting for Eric, and I crush that bad boy. Crush some fries. Burger, solid burger. Shake Shack is excellent. Hot Ones burger, not spicy. I'd give it like a 2 on the spicy scale. Did you get it when you were at the airport?
No, I just got a
No.
regular
Yeah,
burger
like
because I
yeah.
didn't want to like, not that
Shit yourself on the plane.
well, not just that, and even just like kind of like sweat or kind of feel.
It wasn't spicy.
No,
You would
no,
have been
no.
fine.
I mean, I what I had last year, I tried the McDonald's
Ghost
ghost
pepper or
pepper
whatever.
burger, and like it had maybe a little bit of like a tingle, but I feel like by design they can't make it actually as
Yeah.
spicy as the hot sauce or the pepper is, because there probably will be some sort of legal ramifications. But
I don't even know if it's legal. I just think it's a lot of people don't love super spicy things, and you'd get people either complaining or just find it inedible. So they still need to make it like edible, which I
yeah,
understand.
and
But
so I just went with a regular burger and their classic Shake Shack burger and fries and a
crinkle cut.
Diet Coke, and
Yeah.
it was great. I mean, I had it at the airport. You had it in New York, so I don't know like if there's that much of a
I
difference
mean,
in
the airport
quality.
Shake Shack is still good.
Yeah,
I've eaten at that exact airport Shake Shack like multiple times. Um, I've got the breakfast there once. I had their breakfast, which didn't love, didn't love. But the Hot Ones burger, you could have also added a pack of the last dab sauce on the side for like 80 cents or something. Part of me wanted to, but I thought that sauce was already going to be spicy enough, like that I didn't need it. And I'm sure the last dab sauce would have been actually very spicy. Um, but who knows? So Shake Shack was dope. Went back with you, Eric. We went on a little adventure for some Blu-rays. How'd that go?
that it's a sad state of affairs when physical media, at least in the most commercial
Sure.
locales, being Best Buy and
Central Park
a
and yeah.
non existing Barnes and Noble, um,
Yeah.
there's nothing left. Matt. It's a desolate wasteland of physical media, and what's left is just, well, you can go to my Twitter page and check out that photo I took at Best Buy. It's just sad.
Yeah.
The best part about it though was when we were walking up to it, and you looked at because this Best Buy was actually closing, and you're like, oh, it's already closed. It says October 28th, and it's like we missed it. It's like, Matt, it's September.
It's September. Yeah, I know. Again, I don't know how time works anymore. Um, but yeah, you usually, whenever we're in the US, because you hate the French
Yeah.
printing on Canadian Blu-rays, that you always go pick some stuff up. So, we went for a good walk. We got our steps in, but we went to a Best Buy, a Target, and what we thought was going to be a Barnes and Noble, but was permanently closed. All that shit is permanently closing around there too, right?
Yeah.
Like that Best Buy and stuff like that. The Target was more of like a city Target, didn't really have an electronics section, but yeah, we're at that time where like it's not dead yet, but you kind of have to order it online or go to like a specialty store, it seems like. Or if you're in the suburbs, their Targets are a little bit more filled, but even though like when I've gone to those, like they don't have like a huge selection or anything. It's usually just what came out that week, that we got 10 copies of everything. And like when that goes, it goes.
Yeah, and I think LA's better for it than New York.
Yeah.
It seems like part of it is, like you go to some place like you mentioned, like a boutique store like Amoeba Records, which specializes in physical media, so you're going to get something there. But, if you go to a Target in LA, or if you go to, a Best Buy in and around California, it seems like they do have more in stock where
We went to that mall and
yeah,
we went to a Best Buy there and
yeah.
they had okay selection,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it wasn't like a wide selection, but they had like the last, I would say, like when we went, like the last 6 to 7 months worth of, new
New releases,
releases
yeah.
and catalog titles. So it was like, okay, well, like, at least there's still stuff available there. Where New York did seem kind of like a ghost town when it came to physical media.
Yeah. So we went for a walk, came back to the hotel, hung out because we were lazy.
Yep.
And then because we're like, we've been to New York so many times. I'm like, I thought about going to Draft House to see Smile or maybe a Dolby Cinema or something like that. But I knew we already were going to see a movie later that night. And I'm like, all right, let's just relax. We got our hotel rooms and then we both just kind of hung out, right? We both ordered dinner to on room
Yep.
service because like we had a little per diem. And you had a lobster spaghetti,
Lobster
right?
pasta. Yep.
Oh yeah. And then I had the biggest plate of Brussels sprouts I've ever seen in my life, and octopus. Cause I was like, when in Rome, Um I I was just like, okay, they were both appetizer sizes, or one was a side and one was an appetizer. This plate of Brussels sprouts, Eric, you smelt it when you came
Yeah, I
over,
didn't
but
doubt it
like
though.
it, it was gigantic. It was the biggest plate of like fried Brussels sprouts I've ever seen. They were delicious, but
And it was a very
um
strong smell too. Like it was like you could tell,
well, that's Brussels
yeah,
sprouts, yeah.
that like in the same way that any kind of um certain foods have certain aromas, so that like I remember walking
I
into your
wondered if I smelled like that for the rest of the
no,
night.
no, you didn't. No, you
Like,
didn't. Like honestly, like once we left your room, it was fine. It
I
was it was
yeah.
it was more so just entering your room and how like it was wafting. It was like
Just a waft of fart, yeah. Yeah. And your lobster spaghetti you said was okay.
the spaghetti, the pasta was amazing. The lobster was fine. It was a little
Yeah.
chewy. And I
Yeah.
think maybe I'm more of a crab guy. I think I like crab more than
Ooh, I don't like
lobster.
crab. I don't like either, really. I'm
If
gonna
I have to
say,
pick between the two,
is this a hot take? Lobster totally overrated. Totally overrated. I think it's one
no,
of those like fancy ass foods that like unless you lather it in butter, but then I'm like you're just tasting
yeah,
butter and kind of a flavorless seafood that's like not fishy, but like it's not, to me, I've never had lobster where I'm like fuck, that was incredible. Like it just, to me it's just like, oh, you soak it in butter and then you're like, ooh, that was tasty seafood, and you're like, I don't know. Like I've sushi is more interesting to me, like as seafood. Octopus, I love the octopus I had, very okay.
yeah,
But the Brussels sprouts crushed it. So,
clearly,
um, and then I ordered room service again later, but we'll get to that. Had to use all of that. Then we had a little cocktail hour. Had a couple old fashions, maybe three. I had some, a drink with my food for dinner. We're kind of hanging out with other Critics' Choice members and people, um, having a good time. Went over to the New York Film Festival premiere of White Noise, which we will have a review of eventually. I would like to see it again before we review it. It was a long day. I would say the first little bit of the movie, hard for me to get into. I'll leave it at that. But I need to see it again just because I need to be completely lucid, not on a travel day, and to kind of give it a fair shot, because like I did like a lot of elements of it. And Eric, you can kind of go into it a little bit more because there's no embargo or anything, but um, I really liked some of the production design. I liked the odd tone of it. Um, I like some of the kind of things that it's trying to do and talk about, but like overall, I need to see it again. That's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think it's one of those movies that, if you're traveling somewhere and you're seeing it at the end of a day,
Had a couple
it can
cocktails.
be one of those movies that does kind of grate on you a little bit, and it's not really the film's fault. It's more so just
No,
the environment. And I think, like, as much as I like Alice Tully Hall, the seats I found
it
really
reminds me of
uncomfortable.
Ryerson.
Yeah, and like I was thinking about my back the whole time while watching it because I was in so much pain. I was so stiff by the end of it. But the movie itself, I do think it's Noah Baumbach's most ambitious movie, from a technical point of view, but also from a writer's point of view. Adapting Don DeLillo is no easy task. It's almost impossible. There's a group of those kind of literary giants that are really hard to kind of find a sort of way in to adapt to another medium. Obviously, David Cronenberg tried with Cosmopolis, but even other authors like, Philip Roth and Thomas Pynchon, even Jonathan Lithium to some extent, or Martin Amis, like those guys.
John
Yeah,
Grisham.
John Grissom. Those guys are really kind of metaphysical writers where, like, on the page it's so densely written and descriptive that when translating it to a screenplay and then on a screen, it can lose you can lose your point of reference very quickly and what it's going for, and how, I mean, it was talked about in the press conference where the artificial nature of the characters and the emotion has to be there from the acting, because on the page it's more of an archetype or a caricature or a reference than anything else. And with, capitalism and consumerism and the idea of, an impending doom, it has a lot of things that are very familiar, especially with like that 80s family. But even with that, like, it's a blended family. You have multiple kids from different, marriages coming together as well, with this, mom and dad that are kind of academic but also quite literal at times, and it plays very much like a sitcom. And that, I think, is what is intentional, where it's like, these characters get involved in a series of events, one being sort of the toxic airborne event, and it almost playing episodically. It's like, what will this family get into this week or this episode or this segment of the show? But it's done in a feature format that kind of is also playing within the milieu of classic 80s adventure movies, that many of which, you'll notice in, Steven Spielberg films, but also Amblin movies. So there's a lot going on there to really kind of dissect and pick through and digest and take time to consider. But I think it is really well made, and there are sequences where it's like, it sometimes works, it sometimes doesn't. When it clicks, it's kind of interesting, but also, and I don't like using interesting. I think, like, that's such a cop out word, but like, it does sort of captivate you in a way where it's like it is working. And then there are moments where it kind of feels like, oh, we're taking a break from the thing that I did find, engrossing, to kind of, reset or, point out something else and then reboot back to the supermarket. The cinematography and the production design and the
I love
editing,
that AMP, man,
yeah,
and all
are
the
all well
different
done. I think the
brands and stuff like
performances
that.
are as good as they can be given almost the confines of having very little internal life with the characters on the page. So yeah, I think it's the best version of a White Noise adaptation from Don DeLillo being adapted by Noah Baumbach that you could get. It's the best version of that movie. And yeah, it's good. It's not great, but it's also one of those films where, like when it's available on Netflix, it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. And we're
No,
seeing that a
totally.
lot more now where you have the specialty titles that Netflix is releasing. I mean, even something as controversial as Blonde, like Blonde's not going to be a movie that is going to play very well to, I mean, mostly anyone at this point, but it's available on Netflix in the same way that White Noise is available, but those two movies aren't in any way similar to, an Adam Sandler comedy or, one of their kind of middle of the road action films like The Gray Men or The Old Guard. They seem to have something really special with Glass Onion, and that will probably be a turning point for them. But yeah, if you like these weird kind of art house movies that were made in the 70s and 80s specifically, you'll want to seek it out. You're going to seek this out if you know about White Noise or if you know about Noah Baumbach.
If you know about Noah Baumbach,
Yes.
the most crane shots you'll ever get in a Noah Baumbach movie, probably.
Yes, and it also rivals
Um,
Spielberg's The Fabelmans when it comes to train crashes.
mhm,
But yeah,
mhm,
it's
mhm.
it's it's well made, it's well put together. It's one of those movies that I do think like you need to be in the right headspace while watching it as well and kind of know what you're getting into, because if
Yeah,
you don't really know too much and it's been a long day, or if you've watched something else before, like this is an interest this if this had played at TIFF and this was like the
film 4.
yeah, film 4 of the day, or even the first movie of the day at like 8 a.m. or something like that, at like an early morning screening, I think it would be a little bit more difficult to digest.
That's kind of what happened with me, man,
Yeah.
because it was a 9:30 screening. It did not start until 10:30, I feel like, or something like that, 10:15 maybe. I think it was like a 45-minute delay. Um, and yeah, it was so hard for me to get into that first hour, and then I was almost like struggling. And then I did get more into it and I liked elements of it, but it is one of those movies that I am excited. Not that I loved any of it, but just to give it another shot at home, or maybe if they screen it here in Toronto again at Lightbox or something, that I would definitely uh, give that first hour another shot. And then after the screening, we went to the opening night party of the New York Film Festival. It reminded me of when TIFF used to do their big opening night parties at the Liberty Grand here in Toronto at Exhibition Place, which is like this big sprawling venue, indoor spaces, outdoor spaces, sponsored by Campari. Campari was everywhere. Campari was flowing.
It was camping
Um,
out.
the o- the only drinks you could get, or at least at the bars I went to, felt like Campari cocktails. So I was drinking Negronis. I don't even like Negronis really. Um, they're very bitter, but that didn't stop me from having a bunch of them. Eric and me and you walked around and kind of just scoped out the party, like kind of, you know, we didn't know where people were that we knew. We bumped into some people we knew from Toronto, obviously, that were there as Critics' Choice members uh, as well, like Mariska and Rad and Terry and some other people. And then you spotted Ari Aster, which I think was funny.
I sure did, Matt.
You and Mariska did, and then Mariska was like, "Come talk to him with us." I'm like, I'm not bothering him. I'm like, I'm not that guy where I'm like, he's having a conversation with someone. I'm like, I can't do that. I'm like, maybe if I was walking past him and he wasn't already talking to someone, um, I would stop him if I recognized him and go, "Oh my god, Hereditary and Midsummer are fantastic. It's very nice to meet you. How's your festival been? Are you watching movies here?" Kind of things like that. That's what I would do if I met someone. I just can't be that person. And we'll get into the press conference as well. I just like I can't. I'm not that person who will like go up and like interrupt a conversation or hover around a conversation to try to talk to someone. No offense to anyone who does. I wish I had that energy. Like I really do wish that was in me of just like it's just not. And I mean you and Mariska did end up going up to him and you said a few words to him, right? But then like
Yep.
had a short conversation.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
started to
What was it?
rain, but yeah, it was. I mean, it was just
Yeah.
basically like uh, I was kind of there, and I was like, "Oh no, I don't want to bother him." But then like Mariska introduced me, and I was like, "Okay, what am I gonna say here?" And I did like the classic film snob thing. I was like, "Oh, was a really big fan of your interviews on the Criterion Channel with the Safdie brothers." And then I asked him about because he gets a special thanks on Resurrection, the movie with Rebecca Hall, and I was curious to know like what he did on that, or like like
Yeah.
why he got the
Yeah.
special
How he
thanks. And he kind of gave me an interesting, like, I mean, like I'm sure he probably would have, like, if it was like in an actual Q&A kind of thing, would have given me more time, but he was trying to, I think like how to say this in the quickest way possible. But he was kind of like, "Oh, like I just kind of did this or that, and and what
yeah.
have you." And then he was whisked away by his, I think, publicist or people or what
Or
have
the
you. But
assistant or something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was an
Cool.
anxiety inducing experience, like an Ari
Just
Aster
like one of
movie.
his yeah, yeah. Same with me. I've started to go away and Mariska's like, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "I can't do this." And I just walked
I
away.
can't I
And I
can't
was
take it. I
like
know what's gonna happen. I'm gonna
I'm
be in a
like
bear suit by
I'm
the
like
end of this.
yeah, I'm like, I can't do it.
Yeah.
Bye. And then I just like walked away because I needed a drink anyway. I'm like, I'm not drunk enough for this right now. Like, if I was drunk, I'm like, can get pretty confident, not in like a stupid way, but just in like I won't feel as like anxious or embarrassed or something to like go up to someone.
You can
But
join
like,
in on the conversation easier.
yeah, easier. Where at that point I'm like, guys, I don't want to bother him. He seems like he's having a conversation. Maybe he wants to escape that conversation. I don't know, but I'm not going to be the one to interrupt that conversation when someone, because I wouldn't like it if I was having a conversation with someone or like Ari Aster and some random people I didn't know came up and I'd be like, I'd hate that. I'm like, fucking, like that's not. I'm not saying like Mariska was waiting until
Yeah.
that conversation was over. Um, but even then, I was like, I can't hover around here. I gotta
Yeah.
go. And then like, so I went and got a drink. Our friend Max, um, from Twitter bumped into me and he was like, "Matt," and I've never met him in person, so talked to him and his lovely partner for a while. Asked how their festival was going. That's where I kind of like, I was gonna come back, and I probably, if you guys were talking to Ari at that time, I would have joined because it was you guys talking to him, and then I feel like I'm just joining a conversation with people I know rather than bothering Ari Aster. Um, so I talked to Max and his girlfriend for a while, and that was lovely to meet him in person. So it's just like those weird and wild things that like um you're not expecting, like someone you talk to on Twitter and you meet in person, and it's kind of cool. Like it's something that I would have never thought in the past, but I've made a lot of friends over Twitter and the internet and stuff like that, and never thought I would. So like Max is awesome, and talked to him for a while. He works at the Museum of the Moving Image. He does their development and marketing, I believe, over there. We'll get to more from that because Max hooked us up later on in the trip, but had a lovely time talking about what movies he's been seeing at the festival and things like that, and what his partner was doing at the festival as well. So it was just kind of a nice little conversation. You joined in after you talked to Ari Aster too,
Yeah. I needed some time to
and
recover.
met Max. I so then I got another drink. We walked around some more. Jump in at any time, Eric, if there's something that I'm missing or you want to
No,
talk
no. I mean,
about. But
it was
like,
very nice to meet Max. And was his partner's name Sophie or Sophia, or
I believe so, but
I
I have a
apologize
horrible
that
memory.
yeah,
So
I had a hard time. That's the one thing,
hearing,
yeah, with
yeah.
parties
At
where
those parties, yeah.
it's really hard to, like, kind of gauge what people are saying, and I have to, like, lean in at times because my hearing is not great,
Same,
so
dude. I think that was just that party
yeah.
in general. So yeah, we met Max and his lovely partner. Go follow Max as Max Cornelian on Twitter. Um, he's great. So talked to him for a little bit. Then we randomly bumped into other people we knew. It was so weird. Like it's weird being in a different city, like a different country, and this is how like the internet has made things kind of
Or
universal, and you
smaller,
have
a
that.
smaller
Yeah,
world.
smaller, like we're in our bubble, right? Like our film Twitter bubble kind of, right? And there's little subsects of film Twitter. People know of each other but aren't necessarily friends, but like recognize a person from whatever outlet they write from, or their tweets, or met them once before at a festival, or the person from Toronto moved to New York and now they are friends with other people. It's like it's wild. So we were kind of like getting ready to leave because it was raining, and then we bump into a bunch of people we knew. Matt Hoffman, who I haven't seen since for the last time we were in New
Yeah, which
York.
was
um
when you got
both times
sick.
we've Yeah, both times we were in New York, we randomly bumped into Matt Hoffman, who is from Toronto, has written for me when I used to run Toronto film scene and other things. He's friends with Adriana and Nevis and like and I'm good friends with Matt as well through all of this stuff. So it was fun to see Matt and talk to him for a bit. And Jason, whose last name is Jason. I'm gonna butcher your last name, Jason. Oziah, I think is his last name, or on. I'll find on Instagram too. He just goes on Jason, but Jason Oziah on Twitter. I bumped into Jason and he's going, Matt, do you remember how we met? And I'm like, dude, I have the worst. Oziason. There we go. I have Oziason, Jason Oziason. Bumped into Jason because he's friends with Matt as well, and I know him through film Twitter, and he comes to TIFF every year and stuff like that. And he's like, we met at Comic-Con, and I was like, oh my god, really? He's like, yeah, you met my parents at Comic-Con, and I was like, Jesus Christ. It started coming back to me as he said it, but I'm just like, I am so bad with like people and faces and names. Like I've known Jason for a long time, but like I couldn't have placed, where I met him just because I'm an awful person. But Jason's great. Talked to him for a bit. I saw him around at TIFF, but I never bumped into him to have a conversation. So it's funny bumping into him in New York, met some of their friends and stuff like that. So as we were leaving, it was kind of, and then Matt was like, come to the after party at this bar. And I'm like, maybe. And I thought about it because I did want to go back out, but it was like raining and stuff like that too. So
Yeah, I
um,
think I was the voice of reason there, where I was like, Matt, we gotta call it a night. But you still ordered room service though, so
I did. We went back. It was like 3 a.m. Nevis, I was talking to her on FaceTime because she was at Adriana's 30th birthday party. Happy belated birthday to Adriana, former host of Movie Monarchy. So right, that was Movie
yeah,
Monarchy. She was like the
movie
third
night, right?
chair. Yeah, at movie night. Now working for Cineplex again.
She's
So she,
successful.
yeah. And then hey, I wrote for Family Feud
I know.
Canada. So did Adriana actually. So
That's why we're
um
the eighth best podcast in Canada,
yeah,
movie
yeah,
podcast.
yeah. 8 Bet podcast. Ooh, maybe one day.
That's a dream.
Then I ordered a grilled cheese, Eric. People are loving this conversation, aren't they?
I am.
Um uh I ordered a grilled cheese which weirdly had tomato on it. Weird.
That's how you know it's
And
fancy, when they add
a
another
giant
thing to it.
a giant plate of French fries and a Diet Coke at like 3 a.m. So that was
No
fun.
Brussels sprouts though this time. It'd be funny if they snuck in
Then
some Brussels sprouts.
had a nice sleep. We had the press conference the next day, which you've already touched on. I actually thought the press conference was pretty interesting. Like I thought Noah Baumbach is very well spoken, Greta Gerwig very well spoken. It was cool to see Danny Elfman in person and Don Cheadle, and I thought they spoke very eloquently about the movie, and it seemed like they all kind of, or Noah especially, really cared about the material and wanted to adapt it. Um, And then, it was a pretty solid press conference, giving you a little bit more context about the making of the movie. Had a little water, little snacks, little hors d'oeuvres, and people mingled in the room with the cast and crew of the movie. And I did what I said before, where I'm like, I'm not going to interrupt that conversation, so I'm just going to stand over here. And then we didn't eat or have coffee for a long time.
No, but then afterwards we went to Momi, and that was a lot of fun. I mean, even though it
Yeah,
was
I'm
kind of,
glad.
it was more just kind of like, I mean, when I say quick, we were still there for a decent amount of time, but
Almost 2 hours or something
yeah,
like
but it
that.
was
But
kind
yeah.
of a more of kind of a skim through their
We
exhibits
had
and
to
what
kind of
have
go
you.
through it. Like you could spend probably a whole day there, or at least a good chunk of your day. But yes, shout out to Max and the team at Momi who hooked us up, put our luggage away even though their coat check was closed, and um, let us kind of explore the museum for a couple hours while we were waiting to go to the airport, because Momi is in Queens, which is, anyone who's going and hasn't been there and is a fan of film and television, like, you should absolutely go. And it is in Queens, so like you could go on the day that you're going to the airport, like, because I mean, if you're staying in New York, take a day and just go to Queens and go to Momi. But it also is on the way to LaGuardia, so like if you are going to LaGuardia, you could stop for an hour or two and check out Momi like we did. And my second time being there, they have a couple new exhibits which they didn't have before. One you have to pay extra for, which is the Walking Dead exhibit, and then they have the Jim Henson exhibit still, which was there when I was there, and then they have there was something else I think that was new,
Was the Leica
but
stuff
I'll
new?
Yes, the Leica stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you, Eric. The Leica stuff was new and wasn't there, which was just kind of a small corner, and it was more like an interactive stop motion thing that kids could do on computers. But they have like a lot of great interactive stuff if you have like young kids who are interested in movie making, or if you are a parent who is interested in movies and you want to get your kid introduced to that kind of stuff. Like, it's a good mix of, stuff for kids, but also for huge film fans. They have literal props and scripts and costumes and makeup and cameras and microphones and basically everything. Like, it is a dream for people who really love film and television and the moving image. And I just feel like it's you see every aspect in really interesting ways. Like, in even, you can get production books and the making of books and stuff like that and see a lot of that production design and concept art and stuff like that. But just seeing it displayed out there, and they're the real ones from those movies, and the costumes and stuff like that, I love it. Like, that Jim Henson exhibit's also excellent. But Eric, your first time there, so you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I really liked it quite a bit, and just in terms of like seeing a lot of, props and storyboards, and even like, in the post phase of things, there were collector's items and Star Wars action figures from the original lineup, and thinking how, that's all a part of, the cycle of a lot of these studio movies,
Yeah.
especially where like marketing does play a part, and selling action figures and memorabilia does play a part in that. And um watching clips and things like that, I think Barry Jenkins is The Gaze, this exhibit is there's this kind of,
Yeah, that was new as well.
yeah, there's this section that's kind of dedicated to a short that was shot during the making of the Underground Railroad. And it's just basically a lot of cast and crew and extras in costume, and the camera kind of dollying in and out, and kind of, you know capturing a moment in time. And it's such a beautifully realized piece of artistry, and very evocative but emotional too. And yeah, it was really fascinating to, you know collectively with other people kind of observe that and be in the room at that moment. And then, yeah, going into like seeing kind of like blown up versions of things, or scaled down versions of certain set designs, whether they be something from Blade Runner, the opening of Blade Runner, in that opening sequence, or Freddy's sweater from the later Nightmare on Elm
Yeah.
Street movies, and things that kind of you don't necessarily think are needed for a production, but are there to assist the people that are making the movie, and give a visual reference or guide, and putting together something. And even for movies that maybe aren't necessarily historical landmark films or great movies per se, but there's a lot of work that still goes into them, that I found that
And
to
they
be
showcase that. Yeah.
refreshing, that it was a place that could have both the most integral and important parts of making a film or a TV show, to Jim Carrey's The Mask, like things like that. Like, it
Yeah.
was a little bit of
Mrs.
everything.
Doubtfire.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, man, it's awesome. And you could spend so much more time. We kind of had to quickly go
We couldn't
through
even
to
watch a
make sure that
movie, which sucked,
which we would have
because the
loved to
the
do.
Cannes Film Festival was happening, the a tribute to the late great James Caan. And the day that we went, we had missed it, but by the time we got in, but they were playing Alien Nation, and I was like,
Yeah.
this is awesome.
Which that was supposedly Max's baby.
Yeah.
Like, he was the one who came up with that. So Max has got a dope job. I'm jealous. And the Momi is great. You guys should absolutely go check it out if you're in New York. I feel like it's a place that it's one of those museums that I feel like doesn't get talked about a lot. Like, maybe it's because it's so specific or something. Like, obviously there's some great museums in New York, but and it's something we talked about, where people who go to New York, you kind of stay in Manhattan. Sometimes you stay in those touristy areas, and like, get out to Brooklyn, get out to Queens, kind of explore some other areas. And even if you still are doing touristy things like going to a museum, it still kind of gets you out in that area, and you can kind of explore. You can go to a Starbucks like we did. I've never been there before. Oh, Eric, I haven't mentioned the Dunkin'. I got so much Dunkin' Donuts. I got giant ass iced coffees. And I will say, I love Dunkin' Donuts cold brew. Like, it is really good. And maybe it's a novelty thing. Like, maybe if I lived in the US, I'd find a better cold brew somewhere. Um, but I get it. I get it. I love it. Their donuts, I had some when we were at the airport, were kind of stale. They weren't great. But like, I don't know how your chocolate donut was,
Oh, it
but
was
like
fine. It was fine. Like,
yeah, it's
it's.
fine,
I
serviceable.
wonder though if it's that same, if that feeling you have towards Dunkin' Donuts is the same that
Tim
Americans
Hortons.
have to
Yeah.
Tim Hortons, where there is kind of a little bit of a novelty there because it isn't available for the most part in the U.S.
But I get it with Timbits and stuff like that, but Tim Hortons coffee is not good. Their cold brew, not great. And like, at least Dunkin', I feel like there's like a first off, I can get a giant fucking bucket, which is incredible. Like, it's the biggest. I love the sizes. Like, I just want the most iced coffee I can
Your
get.
bladder's
And
just like, Matt, why? Why?
Dunkin' is the place I can do that. And like, I don't know. I think it's good. And you can get oat milk. It's great. Like, I'm all for Dunkin'. I'm Team Affleck when it comes to Dunkin' Donuts. And like, I've wanted, I'm surprised they haven't opened any here. I guess maybe because Tim Hortons and Starbucks kind of have that market. Like, why try to insert yourself? Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, and there's so many smaller specialty places as well, and even something kind of that's in between Tim Hortons and Starbucks with Second Cup. So like like coffee wise, it's like there's so much already
Yeah.
available that it's like, well, what's the point of bringing?
You're really probably competing with Tim Hortons and Second
Yeah,
Cup, and then like, Second Cup is that middle ground. So you're really competing with Tim Hortons, and Tim Hortons has such a stranglehold. Like, I could see whoever owns Dunkin' Donuts, the Dunkin' family,
the
being like,
Dunkster.
what's the point? Like, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think they're gonna take over Tim Hortons. Although, as a Canadian, Tim Hortons not good,
No, but
not good.
it's been around for so long now that it's just a part of the DNA of Canada.
I'm
That
sure Americans say the same thing about
no,
Dunkin',
no, no,
right?
I know
Like,
that, but
me
I'm
as a
talking about from the point of view of like Duncan. If they tried to invade Canada and try to claim part of it, like in terms of competition, I don't think that they would succeed. I think like even
Yeah.
them like it wouldn't end up even being something like Bell versus Rogers in terms of like, you know, the two main cable providers and
No.
not having any other options. Like Tim Hortons is like there is Starbucks, but Starbucks is one of those things where it's like it is and isn't competing against Tim Hortons. It's still something.
Tim Hortons is trying to compete with Starbucks, where I don't think Starbucks is trying to compete with Tim Hortons.
No.
Does that make perfect
Yeah,
sense? Because
and it makes sense in the way that like people that order Tim Hortons on the regular that are customers aren't necessarily going to go out of their way to get Starbucks. Where I think, you know, Starbucks, I mean Starbucks is good, but like Starbucks isn't the best either, but
no,
it's better than Tim Hortons in terms of their quality, but there still is a little bit of that kind of like, oh, well, it's not my go-to thing, or like people don't necessarily
it's like a
order it.
fancy
Yeah,
thing. You're treating
or they
yourself, or
or they're
like you.
afraid of it. I think there's a bit of
Right.
intimidation with how to
Oh,
order, right?
conservative Canadians,
Yeah, I
definitely.
don't know how
Yeah.
to say
Like,
grande or, you know,
yeah. Oh,
Trente or
I think that's stupid. You can just get a normal coffee at
yeah.
Starbucks. But like, ultimately, even coffee snobs at us right now are going, come on, guys. Like, there's so much better. And I go, I'm a simple man. I want my Dunkin' or my Starbucks. Like, yeah, I'm all American boy, you know? Anyways, um, Seattle or Boston. That's all. That's all I think of. Speaking of Seattle, they're playing the Blue Jays in the first round of the MLB playoffs, which start tomorrow, Eric. Tomorrow.
Sports, I don't care.
Yeah, I know. All right, moving on. Anything else from New York? We went to the airport. You got Shake Shack. I got on an earlier flight, which was great. Always try to do that. If you do the 3 hour thing like Eric and I do, if you're through security really quickly, try to get on an earlier flight, because they usually will probably put you on one if there's room. So it's great.
Yeah, I took American Airlines, and that was the first time I've ever flown with them, and I thought it was actually quite nice. Like I
Air Canada was fine, man, but I do understand that, you know, we had some people who were on Air Canada flights and their flights got canceled. So I think that's like the biggest thing right now. It's almost like, to me, the airport's not a clusterfuck from since I've been there, but it's like
the
the
airline itself.
airline where they're like, they'll just cancel flights because they don't have enough people. And I don't think it's like, it just depends on what flight you're on.
But
Like,
this Saturday
really,
night
like,
though was fascinating because Mariska was on the same flight as me. Actually, she was sitting right next to me because she got a different flight, so they put her on that one,
oh,
and we were
okay.
talking.
Oh, because she was, I think, on one of the ones that got
Yeah,
canceled,
so
maybe.
so it was funny. Like she pointed out that like it's almost a dead zone on Saturday night, and Saturdays is like probably like Saturday evening is probably the best time to
The best
fly.
time to fly. Yeah, that makes a good point. Like, not many people, because either people are flying on a Fridays to have their weekend, or if you're going on vacation, maybe a Monday or something like that. Like a Saturday night probably is. Even my Air Canada flight, which was busy, but it was because all of the other flights were started to get canceled, so people were being put on other ones. I luckily got a seat on the earlier one, which still got me home an hour early. And oh, I didn't tell you this story yet, Eric. Maybe I did over like text or something. But I get to the airport. Um, sorry, I go on this earlier flight. They're like, "Okay, we'll give you a ticket on the earlier flight, but you have to check your bag."
Right.
And I'm like, fine, because like it wasn't even guaranteed that like I would get a spot on the later flight, because like for some fucking reason they don't let you check your bag for free, but then if you bring a carry-on bag, there's not enough room for everyone's carry-on bags, so they have to tell you you have to check it for free if we don't have enough room. So if you don't get on the plane early enough, you have to check it. So I was just like, fuck it, I'm whatever, I'll check it on my way home. And I'm like, it can't be that bad. I get to Pearson, get through security all pretty quickly, like get through customs pretty quickly. Um, get down to baggage claim. It's like, oh, it'll be on baggage claim 7. And I'm like, all right, cool. So our whole flight goes over there, but there's like 3 other flights on the baggage claim thing, waiting and waiting. Bags are coming. Bags are coming. Or like I see other people who are on my flight. I recognized other people. We're all waiting. One guy's on the phone, starting to get angry. He's just walking around, waiting. I'm waiting for an hour. So when I get off the plane, like from the time I land to an hour and a half, really, but I'm counting from the time I kind of get through security and I get down to the baggage claim thing. waiting. And I'm like, how the fuck is it taking this long? This is a nightmare. And then I started to go, oh no, Pearson is a clusterfuck. This is absolutely ridiculous to wait an hour. I waited almost as long for my luggage than I did to get from New York to Toronto. And like my baggage took just as long to get from the fucking airplane to baggage than it did for me to fly to New York or fly home from New York. So I'm standing there. A guy comes over. He's like, guys, you guys in from the New York flight? A bunch of us are like, yeah. He's like, our shit's on number 6. I'm like, oh my God. It was on number 6 the whole time. It was probably there forever. And like, he's just like, yeah, I just noticed my bag because it was purple. And it's like, it was like, he's like, I noticed it. And then I saw that all of our stuff was on number 6 and no one said anything.
Right.
Like it just came out of the wrong hole. And like, it was on fucking number 6. So
Go to
I'm
the
like,
doctor for that one. Came out of the wrong hole.
I'm so mad at that point. Like I started to just get so agitated as I'm waiting for this bag. And then I get home and I ate a Subway sandwich, which I Uber Eats to my place to be waiting for me nicely, like a nice sack of food right when I got home. And I was like, what do I want right now? I'm like, I want something that's just carbs and basically something that's just sustenance.
Who
that
gives you energy, right?
Yeah. So a foot-long turkey sub from Subway on whole wheat sounded great. So I crushed that bad boy. Then I went to Nuit Blanche. Um, so I stayed out again
You're a
till like
wild
3 in the
man.
morning, walking around Toronto, and Nuit Blanche, the worst.
Oh, it's
It
always been
sucks.
bad.
It's always bad. I know.
never understood it. Like I remember going the first
But
time.
Eric, if your wife wants to go, you be a good husband and you
I get it.
go.
You're the ultimate wife guy. Unlike
That's that term's gone now.
um people will know what we're talking about, I think. Yeah, I remember the first time I went to Nuit Blanche, for people that don't know that are outside of Ontario, I guess, or Toronto even. Nuit Blanche is kind of like an art
All-night art
exhibit that,
festival.
you know,
Yeah.
people like can display their works on the street. You can go to specialty
Venues
exhibits
and
that are still open. If you know somebody and like you can go to an actual exhibit that's open, that's fine. But like if you're looking for something to kind of enjoy like on the street or what have you, it is so bare. Like there is
It's
nothing.
drunk people, it's teenagers, it's just people who want to stay up all night and walk the streets of Toronto. And like um one of Nevis's, Adriana's partner, Luca, like DJ'd some event at a park, so they all went to that. But then I joined them after because I was already over and walked around with them for a bit. And I again love my wife, and she's like, "Please just come." And I was like, "All right, I'm exhausted, but I will." And I didn't regret it because I just hung out with her, and then we took a Uber
But the
home.
event
We took the
itself is
subway
boring.
home. It is. We walked around and I'm like, is this really it? We couldn't find anything that we really liked. And that was it. That was the New York trip, man. So you went home and went to sleep.
I sure did.
understand.
I sure did. It was lovely.
All right. Before we wrap, a couple other things. So, it's a press conference filled episode. Eric and I also attended the virtual press conference for 20th Century Studios, Rosaline, which is a weird one right now because
Is it
social
Rosaline
media.
or Rosaline?
Rosaline. I always went Rosaline, but that's just me with my stupidity. But Rosaline's probably correct. Who knows with those accents, Eric? uh, we went to the virtual press conference, which we can talk about.
Oh, we can. It's not like an embargo.
Social media embargo is up. Review embargo is not up. So we won't be reviewing the film here. You guys can check out our Twitter if you want to see our impressions on Rosaline.
I haven't even written anything.
Neither have I. I mean, it's the embargo as we're recording this is not up. It's just we can later today. So those are always weird because I'm like, can we talk about the movie? But we're like, I can tweet about it, but can I talk about it, or is it just a tweet? And then the press conference we attended to today, which we'll keep pretty brief, much like the White Noise press conference, which I did enjoy. The Rosaline one, I didn't not enjoy it. For a movie that I, read our Twitter, like I think I can say I liked. I just um it added a little bit. Like it's always nice to hear from the filmmakers and the creators, I think, with all of these things. Like that's what I'm most interested in when I attend one of these press conferences, and you guys can tell with the types of interviews we do and things like that when they happen, usually with filmmakers or writers or cinematographers. Like we like the craft element and the behind the scenes stuff. Nothing against actors or anything like that. I just find, the people who are most passionate, a lot of the times, about the movie and have a lot to say are the people behind the camera making the movie. So it is always interesting to hear from the cast and crew of stuff. And you do get a little bit more context of why someone made a movie or some of the choices they make, whether it's the music or how they got involved in a project, and things like that. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't have much to say, but like it was interesting hearing Karen Maine speak about it,
The
and
director, yeah.
the director Karen Maine, and just kind of, it reminded me also, like the movie, which I'll get more into in the review, of a play I talked about recently on this show called Anne Juliet. So I just found it interesting that this movie, coming out around the same time, having a lot of similar elements, but they didn't reference it in this press conference. But I would have been curious to hear, like, if they know about that play and if there was anything, um, inspiration, or one knew about the other before. But yeah, a pretty standard press conference. I'll put it that way, I guess. Right, Eric?
Yeah, there wasn't too much there in the way of learning about the craft itself or something interesting about the production. You mentioned to me afterwards that it was kind of interesting to learn that, Caitlin Deaver's process is picking a playlist or curating a playlist for her
For her
character to kind
character,
of get
yeah.
into the mindset of the person she's playing. And yeah, I think it's interesting because, like, that script has been around for a while, so I don't know if the development of it, kind of like it going into actual production, was because of this other play happening, because I know somebody who worked on it, and I think you do as well. um was something that maybe was kind of almost like, either serendipitous, or maybe it was something that was kind of calculated, because sometimes those things do happen where, like, there is a trend, but there always seems to be a resurgence with Shakespearean
Shakespeare, yeah.
adaptations. I mean, even with,
And putting a modern spin on it is not wholly new
no,
or
no,
anything,
no.
right?
And I mean, it's the inverse version of, a modern adaptation of, like, 10 Things I Hate About You being The Taming of the Shrew, or, any of those stories, that where it's like you take kind of like a classic, concept, and then kind of adapt it into the modern era. I mean, we even saw that with that horrible Romeo and Juliet version that was at Sundance a couple years ago. That was the virtual version. That was the online version of Romeo and Juliet, which makes even less sense given how, quick technology is to get through to somebody. So, there's always, I mean, even with The Northman earlier this year with Hamlet, like, there's always something going on with a Shakespearean adaptation, or the tragedy of Macbeth. Like, there's always going to be a new version or a new take or a classic reimagining, a revisionist version of Shakespeare. It's
Yeah.
But it is interesting just in terms of, like, taking the characters within the Romeo and Juliet setting and kind of playing with that, and sort of taking characters that are either only mentioned in reference or have smaller roles, and kind of fleshing them out. So,
And making sure everything came from like a woman's perspective, and something is something Karen Maine talked about,
yeah,
which I thought was interesting as
even though
well.
it is written by two
Um,
guys, the two
yeah.
writers of 500 Days of Summer. So,
Yeah, which is, it happens a lot. I find myself going, interesting choice of writers on a movie, and then they try to fill all the other positions out with, like, either women
Which
or
is
people of
fine. It's
color,
not
like
it's not
which is
but it almost
nothing.
feels
Again, I'm not
deceitful
saying
on the not on the filmmaker's point of view, but on like the marketing of a movie where it's like we're being
yeah,
authentic, and then you see like, Straight Outta Compton is written by a bunch of white people, and you're just kind of like,
the Woman King. It was two white women.
yeah,
And I'm like, it's just it's always kind of, yeah, interesting in a weird way of going, huh, all right. But then at least you get someone, the rest of the cast and crew, and bringing their perspective in on it and putting their stamp on it. And yeah, you guys will get our review on Tuesday, uh as you're listening to this, so we'll go more into detail there of what we thought about the movie. But yeah, it was just kind of interesting getting everyone's process of adapting a Shakespeare movie, but with modern language, modern sensibilities. It feels like a very, today teen rom-com, but like with that Shakespearean lens, which is I'm a sucker for. And I think they, it is always sort of interesting in these press conferences. They can kind of go either way. You do get like a little nugget here and there. So yeah, that was our Rosaline,
I think it's
Rosaline,
Rosaline or
um,
Rosaline. I think it is.
Rosaline.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, all right. It's been a long day, everyone. Um, and then finally, sticking with the Disney family and the Fox family, really. You brought
Fox
it up early.
DVD.
You brought it up earlier in the show, Eric,
Yes.
but the news we missed out last
Free
week,
Guy
which we
2.
need to we need to touch on. We got a trailer or announcement video, which, as much as I've kind of harped on Ryan Reynolds a little bit over the last, few years, I will say his marketing company, um I think their advertisements really do work, and it takes his sense of humor and puts them into these, and I think it works in those small 30-second, minute and a half commercials that they do, that doesn't feel as maybe as grating as like a feature length movie. But um yeah, they dropped a video where Ryan Reynolds comes out and he's talking about Deadpool 3 and why they didn't have anything at D23, but he wanted to announce that Deadpool 3 is happening. And then Hugh Jackman walks in the background and he's like, "Hey, Hugh, you want to play Wolverine one more time?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." And then walks up the stairs, and they announced Deadpool 3, and the 3 is Wolverine's claws into the Deadpool logo. I love that. Um, and anything can happen now, Eric, because we're in the multiverse saga.
Multiverse.
Um, is death real? Are we in a multiverse? I don't know. Curious to get your thoughts, because like I'll kick it off, because I like the Deadpool movies. I like the Deadpool character. I love Wolverine. The X-Men movies, hit or miss. Wolverine being that one thing that's always been good in them, I think, for the most
Except
part.
for
Other than,
X-Men Origins
yeah, go ahead.
Wolverine.
Yeah, go ahead. Which, hey, had Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman
The
in it.
first time
So,
together.
um, I would say that, yeah, X-Men Origins Wolverine is obviously the lowest point, but Logan being a high point and ending that character so perfectly. Um, it's interesting bringing him back. Does it diminish that? Does it matter? Like, just maybe have fun. Who cares? Like, it could be a different version of Wolverine. He could pick him up on the timeline earlier. He could pick him up right before his death, as a kind of tongue-in-cheek thing. Like, there's so many different ways you can kind of approach this. And ironically, weirdly, the end of Deadpool 2 might work perfectly with how they'll set him up for the MCU, because he has that time travel device or whatever it is, or that portal device
Right.
thing. um and I'm all for this. Like, I do think like a buddy road trip movie with Deadpool and Wolverine, or whatever this will end up being, could be a lot of fun. And I'm not like, Logan will always be there, and I think will always be a perfect ending for that version of the character. But I think being in the multiverse saga, introducing Deadpool to the MCU, you're now introducing Hugh Jackman's Wolverine to the MCU, um, which I still believe he won't be the Wolverine moving forward. I think this will be
One and done.
not a one and done, but a one and Secret Wars.
One and
No, a one in war, a one in war or something. Like I really do think that he'll be in this movie, and then he'll be in Secret Wars, which I think they'll in Secret Wars they really will bring back anyone who will come back who has done a Marvel movie before. Um, that's my
Ben Affleck as
belief.
Daredevil.
I wouldn't be surprised, dude. I really think they'll go that deep into just bringing back whoever will come
If they
back to
bring
have like
Edward
a
Norton back as the Hulk, that will be funny.
I don't know, man. So, anyways, I'm stoked. I'm excited for this. Like, I do agree with you that the Deadpool movies can be a little juvenile and grating at
Obnoxious.
times, and yeah, obnoxious. And but I think it works more than it doesn't for me personally, just because like, especially if you take that and put it into the MCU, and if Disney and Marvel Studios, again, I don't love Sean Levy as a filmmaker either. He's fine, but I if they do kind of the Chippendale Rescue Rangers thing where they kind of aren't so precious over the stuff that they own, and they kind of let them poke fun at things in a way that you're surprised that Disney or Marvel Studios would let them poke fun at the MCU and superhero movies, then I'm kind of hoping that's the vibe I get from this, right? Because like I was surprised at multiple times in Chippendale Rescue Rangers of going, I'm shocked Disney said, yeah, you can do that. And that's what I hope I get out of this movie, essentially, right? Like, if that's what you bring this character in who's breaking the fourth wall, who kind of knows all, who can kind of poke fun at everything, and then you still have Wolverine have this kind of you're hoping like Lethal Weapon style relationship of like the buddy cop, buddy road trip kind of thing. Maybe I'm down
Well,
for it.
yeah,
I
I
don't
think
know.
it could almost be like Thor Ragnarok, right? Where you team
Yeah,
up the Hulk and Thor, or have that kind of like the duo kind of thing going on. I honestly don't care. I don't think Deadpool 3 ruins the legacy of Logan by any means. It's just another movie, and like I think maybe the thing that I am maybe most curious about still is how the tone of Deadpool will fit into the rest of the MCU because of it being an R-rated property. How will that kind of adapt, moving forward? Will that be able to work within the confines of the greater Marvel universe, and
I think it'll be an R-rated
yeah,
movie.
no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying like how will those sensibilities play within, like if Deadpool kind of is brought back for Secret Wars or more integrated moving
I think
forward.
you just bleep him out. You literally have a bleep in it,
Right.
and he references it, and then
Just
that
bring in Alpha
like
Flight. That's all I want.
you know I'm so I hope, man. That's all I know. I'm stumbling because I'm just like I'm with you. I want Alpha Flight so badly, and it could with Logan being in this, like it definitely could be a part of it if they go the full Canadian route of it, because like both characters are Canadian. Ryan Reynolds being Canadian, Sean Levy being Canadian. um I could see it,
You
dude.
could spin
Like
off
either
Alpha Flight 2 into a series, or I mean,
yeah.
we were talking with Werewolf by Night, like what could work as like a 45-minute sort of special. I think
Oh,
Alpha
Alpha
Flight.
Flight would be perfect. Yeah, on Canada Day, bro.
Yep.
On Canada Day, I know Canada Day's not really like probably appropriate anymore. Like, but I get it. Like, not a day that maybe we should celebrate. But like, um, either way, doesn't necessarily have to be that day. But if we get an Alpha Flight special presentation, I am all for that, and I could definitely see it. You have this many Canadians involved. I know you obviously Hugh Jackman's not, but the character of Logan is. So like there could be a strong Canadian connection in this movie, right? Like, um, you hope with all that, and Disney needs their CanCon,
Yep.
so somehow they're trying to argue certain movies being CanCon, but Uh, I don't know what it's gonna be, but it was a random announcement right after we recorded last Wednesday or whatever.
Well,
So
especially after, Comic-Con and D23 had already passed, right? Like, it kind of felt like we knew that Deadpool 3 was happening, but because of it.
do you think they were just still negotiating with Hugh Jackman, maybe? And then
Probably.
like
I mean,
it's
I think
just
that's
like,
even the case with some of the Fantastic Four stuff where it's just you have to make it official before you announce anything to the public, because if it's not, written on paper, if it's not there, then you run the risk of things falling apart. There has been plenty of situations where you see, like, oh, this person's in talks to join this project, or this person's going, is potentially circling this role, but that doesn't mean that they're in it. Like, they could be in talks, or well into talks, or almost ready to go, but you need to get that confirmation in order to make it official. And if it's not there, you can upset people, especially when it comes to comic book movies, where it's like, if you say, like, oh, this person is, that's why the word rumor or speculation is used a lot. But if you say, like, oh, this person's in talks to play so and so or such and such, and it doesn't happen, like, the internet just turns to fire. So you have to be completely and utterly um confirmed in order to make anything work.
mhm, agreed. Quickly before we end the episode, and it kind of makes sense because this character also breaks the fourth wall. She-Hulk today, episode 8. Excellent. Just absolutely excellent MCU storytelling, excellent episode of TV, excellent use of another character, excellent use of all these little plot points that you think might not be going anywhere, or they're kind of building to something and then they build to something weirdly uh disturbing and relatable. um and it's just made toxic masculinity the number one villain in the MCU for me because like it's slowly what this show has been like a fun light comedy with slight action elements here and there and slight lawyer court case elements here and there, but really about a young woman in her is it late 20s early
30s. She's in her
30s.
30s, because
Yeah,
she talks about
30s.
dating in her 30s being really
Yeah,
awkward. Yeah.
yeah, in her 30s, and just like about shitty men, right? And like it does such an excellent job, which I remember even talking to you a couple weeks ago going like, I don't know if it's going anywhere. Like, it's fun, it's funny, like I like it, but I just am not super invested in it. But like today's episode made me go, oh fuck, like I'm really, I thought the ending was excellent, and it was weirdly disturbing, and not in the way that I thought the show was going. And then also just an exciting, fun episode of superhero television, like both with a great court case element, some great action sequences, like almost the like just exactly what you would want from an episode of like an MCU TV show. And it goes back to being that episodic nature, right? Like having a guest star, having a self-contained story that's still adding to the overall plot. And like the show's done like a really good job with that, where each episode you could just go, oh yeah, that's the episode with this, like watch that one episode and you're still okay. You'll still get the full story arc from that one single episode, but then it's also giving you the little kind of bits and pieces of what the overall story is, which I think is really, really cool. So
Yeah,
it's
I'm
good.
excited to catch up with it. I still haven't watched what after episode 3, so I still have some.
Since the review versions, you
Yeah,
haven't,
yeah,
yeah.
and Andor as well, which is now finally kind of got
Yeah.
to new episodes. So
And I haven't watched the newest episode of Andor, which is very unlike me, but I don't think that's telling of the series because I've really liked those first 4 episodes. It was just like yesterday we had to watch Rosaline and or Rosaline and or Rosaline. And I just didn't have time to watch Andor. So I'm gonna kind of decompress after we record this and decompress with Andor. So I'm gonna watch that after this. But She-Hulk has been great, man. I think it's up there with Wanda if they stick the landing. up there with WandaVision and Loki.
Oh,
Um, like as I think, and I liked Miss Marvel a lot too. But I think this is almost like a perfect use of the television format, and I've really kind of just enjoyed it. I found it funny, like Tatiana Maslany and the chemistry she has just with other people in the show. But even on this episode, I didn't think, like, I won't spoil it, but like the chemistry she has with this other person, I'm like, holy fuck, this is fantastic. I was not expecting this from these two characters, and like I want more of this, and I never would have thought I wanted that. So I was all for it, man. Like it is great. But yeah, I'll watch Andor and report back next week. But we're coming up to a full 2 hours, so let's, like, anything else, Eric, you want to get off your chest, talk about before we
I'm good,
go?
man. I'm
Anything
good.
news wise? Yeah, just chilling. All right. Thank you all for listening or watching. We really, really do appreciate it. Go check out all of our other hashtag content we have up right now. You guys can get our reviews for Werewolf by Night, Amsterdam, Don't Worry, Darling, How to Blow Up a Pipeline, The Greatest Beer Run Ever, Women Talking, Pearl, Andor, Triangle of Sadness, The Banshees of Inisherin, Empire of Light, Glass Onion, The Fablemans, Bros, Brother, Weird, the Al Yankovic story, which is coming out soon, and many more. So go over to the reviews channel to check that stuff out. On this channel, you can check out our Last of Us impressions from last week. If you came for the Mario stuff, maybe you're a video game fan, go check that out. And then our TIFF wrap up, which is on episode 132. So you guys can check those out as well. Catch my writing on Family Feud Canada, Monday through Thursday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, CBC and CBC Gem. And follow me on all those social medias. Actually, first go to Letterboxd and follow us there at Untitled_movies, because that's where you'll find everything. It's the one-stop shop. And then follow me on Letterboxd at Matt Rohrbeck, and on Twitter. I'm 50 followers away from 3,000. I would really like to get there, just because that's, I need to.
You need that validation so badly. I'm gonna see how many followers I have too. Well, I only have 1,612.
So
So
that means I'm 2 times as good as you.
oh, we already knew that though. I mean, if you listen to any of these podcasts, you'll know that in 5 minutes.
No, that's not true.
Yeah, so I'm low life Eric Marchin. You can find more of my video reviews on rogerstv.com/cinemascene, and on the social medias at em6211.
Until next time,
It's me, a Mario.
it's a me, I'm Matthew.